Now, to most companies, that tenfold increase seemed impossible. Even people who worked on the engineering test stand noted that while EUV technology itself is a done deal, there were 6 zillion engineering challenges to make it a fab line reality. And so, one by one, American companies walked away from developing a full EUV lithography machine. That left just one company, ASML. ASML, which used to stand for Advanced Semiconductor Materials Lithography, is located in a small, nondescript town in the Netherlands. It spun off from Philips back in the 80s with little more than a shed and a barely working wafer stepper to its name. But Philips also gave them people: Jos Benschop, ASML's first researcher, and Martin van den Brink, who would eventually become ASML's CTO and EUV's greatest champion.
And he's really like the Steve Jobs of lithography. And he saw EUV coming.
ASML had joined the US EUV consortium earlier, and now it became their task to find a way to commercialize EUV. They would work together with their German partner Zeiss, where Zeiss would take care of the mirrors and ASML would focus on the light source. One of the first decisions when making any lithography system is deciding which wavelength to use.
In the early days, anything between 5 and 40 nanometers was explored. Okay. The thing is, you need to find a source and you need to find optics that reflect the wavelengths. Right. So you have to look for the combination.
Underwood and Barbie had already made mirrors that could reflect light of around 4 nanometers. And since that wavelength is so small, it seems like the obvious choice. But the maximum reflectivity for those mirrors was only around 20%. So after hitting 6 mirrors and the reticle, you're just left with 0.00128% of the light, which is way too low. Fortunately, further researchers also looked at 2 other pairs: silicon and molybdenum, which had a theoretical maximum reflectivity of 70% for wavelengths around 30 nanometers, and molybdenum and beryllium, with a theoretical maximum reflectivity of 80% for wavelengths around 11 nanometers. So the choice seemed obvious, right? I mean, pick the shorter wavelength and the higher reflectivity. But it turns out that beryllium is extremely toxic and it's also difficult to handle. So scientists focused on silicon and molybdenum instead. To make the mirrors, Zeiss used a process called sputtering. A target of coating material is bombarded with either plasma or ions, causing atoms to be ejected, fly off, and stick to the mirror. This is a messy process, so the layers end up having bumps and gaps.
There was a nice trick that actually the team in the Netherlands perfected. With ion beam, you just shake it a little bit until the atoms fall in the hole where it needs to be, and then it's all flat.
With the mirror design locked in, ASML needed a source for that specific wavelength.
So it was 13.x.
Yeah. Okay.
Now the next good question is, what's the x? Now you look for the source. So there are basically 3 ways to generate EUV, to build a sun on Earth.
The first method, which early researchers used, was the synchrotron, but it was quickly rolled out because each machine needed its own source. The other 2 methods are based on the same principle. When an electron recombines with an ion, the ion drops to a lower energy level, and it releases that excess energy as a photon. And if you choose the ion just right, then that photon will have exactly the wavelength you need. Now, there are 2 ways you can create those ions. The first is you take a metal, heat it up until you get a metal vapor, and then you apply a strong electric field across it. This causes free electrons to knock into nearby atoms and ionize them. If you then turn off the electric field, the electrons recombine with the ions and produce light. This is discharge-produced plasma.
That's the concept we used first, because of its relative simplicity. And we quickly got it to a few watts. We wanted to get 100 watts, and we struggled forever.
So you couldn't scale it?
We could not scale it.
They needed a drastic change. So they switched to the second method. This method uses a high-powered laser to hit a target material, creating a plasma that's more than 220,000 degrees Celsius hot. The electrons have so much energy that the nucleus can't hold on to them anymore, and up to 14 electrons escape their orbits. After the laser shuts off, the electrons and ions recombine to produce light. This is laser-produced plasma, and it was the only method that seemed scalable. In fact, this was the same method that the engineering test stand used. A 1700-watt laser fired into a stream of xenon gas to produce 13.4 nanometer light. But xenon had a big problem. The conversion efficiency, that is the ratio of usable light to the amount of power you put in, was terrible. It was only around 0.5%. That's because while xenon does emit light in the 13 to 14 nanometer range, there's much more light released around 11 nanometers, so most of the energy went into making light that the mirrors couldn't reflect. Plus, the laser didn't ionize all the atoms, so leftover neutral xenon atoms would strongly reabsorb some of that 13.4 nanometer light.